Welcome back to this week's episode of Life in Private Staffing. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good couple of weeks. Where are we now? Season 2, episode 4, I think we're in. So well and truly getting into season 2 here, and I hope you've been enjoying mixing up the guests a little bit. We've been getting a different group of guests in this season, getting people in who are a bit more involved in the recruitment side of things. So hopefully you've been finding these episodes useful. Looking forward to today's episode. We've got Julia here who works at Norland Nannies, which if you don't know anything about childcare, you're about to learn a lot, because I didn't know much about Norland myself until recently. Norland is just a really highly regarded place to go to train and then be placed as a private nanny. So lots and lots to talk about. And if you are considering a career in childcare, this is an absolutely fantastic place to start. Welcome to the show, Julia. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Thanks for joining.
That's a pleasure to be here.
And sorry that I sound like a man, everybody. I'm under the weather today and I sound even more manlier than normal. So apologies for my voice. But lots to cover today. You've been involved with Norlands for years and years and years, haven't you? Where did your Norland journey start?
Oh, my journey started in the 80s. I attended, in those days, Norland was based in Denford Park near Hungerford, and you lived in, and it was kind of huge stately building. So I've been in early years ever since then, really, in various forms, but I've never strayed far from early years during that time.
And now's a really sort of like prominent time for nannies. Like the demand for nannies right now is probably higher than ever, with obviously nearly 12 months into sort of the pandemic and lockdown and having children at home. So I think now is, if people haven't considered it before, now's a really good time to consider it as a career, because it's such a sought after profession, isn't it, all of a sudden? So
yes. So a lot of our nannies have sort of stayed with their families during lockdown, but we have seen an increase in parents wanting particularly part-time nannies to help with homeschooling and just general care, really, whilst they work from home.
Yeah, fair enough. So how did it start for you? Did you always want to work with children, or did you sort of fall into it? Or
well, it was my grandma, actually, because I was going to be a teacher and I was doing A levels, and was always good with children. And my grandma had always wanted to be a Norland nanny, because actually Norland was founded in 1892, so it's been around a long time. And she suggested I consider Norland. So my mum took me along for an interview, and the rest was history. So I trained for 3 years at Norland, and then you have to do, and then I did a year's placement with a family. And once you've completed that, you're deemed a qualified Norlander. And then I nannied. And I worked as a nanny mostly in central London for about 3 or 4 years until I got married. So yes, it was almost by default, really. And then since then, I wasn't a nanny, for very long, only for about 4 or 5 years. But I've always worked in early years following on from that. So, and then I did my degree in my 40s, and my early years professional status was all completed in my 40s. But of course, now at Norland, you do a degree alongside the Norland Diploma. So all of our Norlanders come out with an early BA Honours early years degree, and the Norland Diploma on alongside that as well.
So intense. So most people go to university for 3-4 years and get their degree. You guys are doing the degree and the diploma at the same time.
Yeah. So our nannies our students work particularly hard, because yes, not only are they doing the BA Honours degree, but they're doing the Norland Diploma alongside that. And the diploma is the more practical element of the course. And it's the things that if you Google Norland or look at Norland, always come up, like the skid pan driving and the security work that we do with you, the Debrett's training, all that sort of thing. But also you get a lot of practical experience as well whilst you're there working with children and babies. In fact, our Norlanders are the only students allowed into certain hospitals. So for example, in the Bath one, to work alongside newly in the antenatal wards and in the children's wards. So we try and give students as much hands-on practice as we can.
Well, it's that kind of profession, isn't it, where you can do as much theory as you like. It has to be, you must learn on the job, really learn on the job. And
Yes.
so those courses, if you're going to do courses that's purely theory based, obviously it's all well and good, but it's not going to give you the confidence that you need with children.
No, and of course, every family's expectations and your roles and responsibilities within that can be different. So, and if, you know, lots of our nannies work for high net worth celebrities that are also celebrities who are in the public eye. So, of course, their lifestyle and expectations can be different. So it's, and you're living in somebody else's home. As well, so there's all these sorts of things that you have to try and juggle. Most of our Norlanders won't wear uniform in their jobs, although we do have a uniform, because they don't want to be, families don't want them to be singled out as, you know, having a Norland nanny. So
well, it would just be obvious. If I saw a family walking down the street with a Norland nanny in uniform, I would immediately know that that's a high-profile family from the Norland
Well, yes. I mean, our Norlanders work for all sorts of different families, not just high-profile and celebrities. You know, we're sort of normal families who are both professionals working often. So it's not all high-profile, but yes, we are sort of across all sorts of different families, often families with twins for extra help, and also maternity nursing as well. So our Norlanders will go in and help new mums.
I suppose it's the same concept as high profile people don't want big burly security men. They want like inconspicuous normal guys in jeans, few behind. It's the whole staying under the radar a little bit.
Yes,
but it's still, like you say, it's still nice to still have that. Like that, I'd recognise an Norlander a mile off. It's still nice that after all these years, it's still part of. It's not sort of, you know, died, you know, as time's gone on. You know, it's still part of who you guys are, which is cool.
Yeah, it's part of our heritage. I mean, we were founded by a lady called Emily Ward, and she felt strongly that nursery nurses should be qualified and should have a recognition for the role, the sort of very specialist, unique role that they play in families. And so we've always had a uniform, and we always will.
Yeah,
it's part of our heritage and who we are.
Yeah, nice. And you're still involved with Norland now. So what do you do for them at the moment?
So I am their head of agency and consultancy. So before COVID, that meant I did a lot of traveling for Norland, representing them around the world and with consultancy services. And I'm also their acting head of agency and alumni. So we have an agency that places all of our Norlanders, and we have an alumni. We're setting up an alumni association for our Norlanders who have qualified and are out there, a more formal alumni. We often say you're a Norlander for life, you know, no matter what you'd end up doing, but we want to make that support more formal.
And so you could literally finish your degree, disappear for 10 years, come back, knock on your door, and you'd take my call.
Yes, and we have lots of Norlanders who are more mature who come back because their children have gone to school or university, or they've got divorced and they want to come back into nannying. I mean, obviously they have to update a little, but yeah, and they can come straight back into nannying. At the agency, we have more jobs than we have Norlanders by a significant margin. So Norlanders are always quite highly sought after in certain areas. So we can guarantee, I mean, I've never ever been out of work. I've always had a job, and I've got jobs on the basis of being a Norlander that hasn't even been relevant to Norland. So for example, I ran a jewellery shop. I was manageress of a jewellery shop, and she employed me on the basis that I was a Norlander, but obviously it had nothing to do with early years. So our Norlanders go off and do all sorts of different things. So they're not just nannies. It's a career for life if you want it to be. but you know, anything to do with early years can be relevant, especially now that you do the degree.
Well, that's so good, because it's a massive investment. Well, obviously it's a financial investment, but all degrees are, but it's a massive investment from a time and effort point of view, because it's so intense. And so it'd be such a shame to come from that and it not be recognisable. So it's really nice that that holds weight in the real world, beyond childcare, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I own my own, well, I still own a nursery. I don't run it anymore, my daughter runs it, but I've owned a nursery for the last 20 years. And I've been lucky enough to be outstanding for majority of that time. And although in the area that I set the nursery up, Norland wasn't perhaps well known in the local community, it was always noted, you know, when I was doing other work. So yeah, it's always been. And there was a very elderly lady who lived up the road who was also a Norlander, and she just used to pop in for a cup of coffee because she was Norland. You know, when we would catch up on what was going on at Norland, this just before I worked for them. So yeah, it was it's lovely. Yeah, it's, you never know.
So nice.
You never know.
More than a degree, isn't it? With that.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like a club. You never know. You know, I had I went up to Crufts with a friend because this was about 17 or 18 years ago. We wanted French bulldogs. It was in those days French bulldogs weren't as popular, and we found this lady who lived in a castle, and she had we thought the best French bulldogs at the show. So we got chatting to her, and she said to me, "Oh no, I never let my puppies. I keep all my puppies. You know, I'm very careful about who my dogs go to." And in the conversation, we found out that we were both from Norland. And so she said, "Oh, of course, if you're Norland, you can have a puppy." And so my friend I came away with puppies, you know, not literally, but, you know, so you never know when it's going to be useful.
You know what? People listening might think, you know what? I've not been to Norland, but I'm just not dropping it in because this could carry me. But it's just so good. And with the agency side of it, like, that's fantastic, because so many people are paying to go to university with absolutely no guarantee of anything afterwards. And if anything, in some industries, this is so harsh. Like, I went to uni but if I was interviewing for someone in my office now, and I interviewed two 22-year-olds, and someone's been doing recruitment for 3 years and someone's just finished uni, I'll probably go for the person that's done recruitment for 3 years. So it's actually like there's no guarantee of being able to get work having done a degree. But because you guys have got the agency attached to Norland, and like, oh my God, like, this is amazing, but like not what I want to hear as an agency owner, that you've got a million like jobs to every Norlander, and so what an imbalance. Like most other agencies, the complete opposite. It's a candidate heavy market. We've got so many candidates for every single role that we've got, and it's ever so difficult to sort of help people in that way. So to be in that situation where there's guaranteed work, you're always going to have vacancies for experienced Norlanders. It just means that people that have decided to go down this career path and go to Norlands have a certain future. They're guaranteed. Their future is guaranteed. It's certain. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh yes, yeah. Once you're qualified, the average starting salary is about £40,000. We have jobs all over the world as well, so it's not just in Britain. London's our most popular area, which I guess it is for most people, for most agencies, but yeah, all over the world as well.
So do you find it difficult as an agency then? Because if we have a client call us saying, "I'm looking for a house manager," we would bend over backwards to find them a house manager, and we would hate the fact if we can't fill it. But you must be in a situation where you get clients asking you for nannies, and you're like, "Well, I'll try, but I don't know if I'll have one." And so
we have to try and manage expectations when employers come to us, and some jobs are more popular than others. At the moment, rota jobs are very popular with our nannies. So yeah, it will depend. And of course, every employer thinks their job is, you know, a great job, and of course they are, but yeah, we can't always guarantee to fill them.
To be fair, like, we've got some fantastic nannies in our books, but if I was looking for a nanny, and you've got the choice of going to Norland or not, you would probably go there first, like as a first port of call, because of the quality of nanny you're going to get and the level of education they've got. And from a recruitment fee point of view, I assume you charge. If the fees are the same, you were going to go there first and then maybe go to a less specialised agency afterwards. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, we do try very hard to make sure that our Norlanders are as qualified as possible for the job that they're going to do. And I mean, that's ongoing all the time. We're always constantly reviewing what we do and how we do it. And the other thing to say is that, you know, we're at the forefront of early years expertise. So we, although we've been around for a long time, we're very focused on what's happening now and what we know about child development and brain development in particular, and how that should be influencing how we're looking after our children. So it's kind of, we try to be cutting edge as well as traditional.
I was just going to say that's a perfect balance, because sometimes when you have agencies that have been around forever, they still operate like they've been around forever. And so it's very difficult for them to modernise and adapt to the modern market. So the fact that you've been around for so long, yet are able to still, you know, have the cutting edge approach is just the best of both worlds, isn't it? Because you've got that modern element to your recruitment and to your training with such an old established company. Great.
Yes, yeah. And it's always about a balance. You know, there are some things that we're always going to have to know how to do properly. But also current thinking and guidance changes as well. So, for example, weaning used to be, you know, you could wean about 3 months, and now the current guidance is 6 months. So it's just about making sure that you're up to date and aware of what's happening out there.
Yeah, fair. So let's talk about Norland itself then. So where's Norland based?
Norland is based in Bath. So we have two campuses across two sides of Bath. So yes, we're fairly central to Bath.
And if someone said to you, what is Norland? It's a university.
We have degree awarding powers. We're not a university yet, but we're aiming to be a university in the next couple of years. We hope to be the first, the smallest university actually in the country when we gain the accreditation. So yes, you would come to us and you would do a full BA honours degree, which now is written by ourselves. So instead of having somebody else help us award it, we write and deliver our own BA honours early years degree.
Fabulous. And do people come and live at Bath?
Yes, so they live in accommodation, which we help organise particularly for the first year, like in other universities. But the majority of our students will live in Bath, yes.
And so what's your process then for selection? Can anyone come if they've?
Yes, absolutely anyone. So you would apply in the usual way like you would to any university through UCAS, and we additionally have a interview process as well. Okay.
And you're looking for nice normal people with the right attitude.
We just want that you like children. That you're interested in early years and that you like children, and that's enough for us. We also have bursaries which we give to Norlanders who wouldn't be able to afford to come otherwise, and we award bursaries every year. That's really why the agency and myself, when I'm doing consultancy and training, that brings in money so that we can give it back out as bursaries so that anybody can come who would want to. So yes, that's a panel. You put in an application and then that's looked at, and I think around the average is around about £3,000, but it will depend on your circumstances and your income, your parents' income, if that's applicable.
Yeah, I can't think of a competing establishment. Is there like, because that's where people can go to, like, I don't know, is there anything that offers quite what you do?
No, I don't think so, not that I'm aware of. No, I don't.
You can go and do like childcare BTECs and all that kind of stuff, but it's not quite the same thing.
Yes, I mean, you can go and do an early years degree at any university, or there are a lot of universities, but it's the Norland Diploma alongside that which makes us slightly different.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes you recognizable as well. Like it's the name that holds the weight.
Yeah, I mean, we have 300 students at any one time coming in, and so we take in students of up to 100 every year, and we have 3 years going through, and then another 100 out on placement with a family. I went to China recently to a conference, and they just thought it was hilarious that we would only have 300 students at a time when they've got about 5,000. But that means that we are quite bespoke. Class sizes are smaller, so we can give that, that more individual attention.
And so what's the pass rate like? Do you get people, you must get people not make it to the end because it's so intense?
Very rarely. Because you have to pass the degree and the diploma and your NQN year to get full Norlander status. So there might be some people who would get the degree and then perhaps not want to nanny, and but that's very rare. I can't think of a time actually that's happened, to be honest. We would try and support you through, because obviously it's an investment and your time and money, so we would try and support you through. So anybody we felt might not be suitable, we would try and identify as soon as possible, as soon as possible in studies, which is why in your first year you go out on placements and you go straight into it
to make sure it's for you. To be fair, I can't imagine you would choose to go and do a 4-year childcare degree if you didn't want to have a career in childcare.
It is, we do look for previous early years experience, so that that you've either babysat or you've looked after your siblings, or you've had some sort of experience of early years, because it's not for everybody.
Yeah, no, of course. I'll just go onto that then. So you obviously did your Norland course and you went out as a Norlander into the private sector and worked as a private nanny. What was it for you then? So like, what did you enjoy particularly about working as a private nanny?
Well, I needed the money to begin with, because I'd been at Norden all that time and been very poor, so it was great to go out and earn a good wage straight away. My first job was in central London, and I had my own flat for the weekends. So I worked for the family during the week, and then I had my own flat at the weekends, which was lovely because I was the base for everybody coming to London. It was quite a central location, and the independence and actually being able to put into practice everything that we'd learned at Norland. I mean, obviously everybody's situation is different. And my first job, I worked for quite high profile people, and then my second job was not quite so high profile and was a little bit more normal, if that makes sense, a bit more every day. So the third family I work for, I'm still in touch with now. So 30 years later, I'm Facebook friends with them, and that's quite interesting. But yes, I'm still in touch with them, and I feel very old whenever I see them.
I've had a nanny on the podcast before, and I remember sort of saying to her, is it sad the fact that there's an end, there's always going to be an end to your work with the family, and how sad to build that and move? She was like, not at all, because you stay in touch with them, so you've just got this extended family that's just forever growing throughout your career, which is lovely.
Yeah,
that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it's different to when I was at the nursery, when I remember having a little boy that I got very fond of, who we had from 6 months all the way till he went to school, and then he left and I never saw him again, because he went off and he went to school, and that was it, and that was right and proper. But with nannying, as you say, you tend to more often stay in touch with the family if things went well.
Is it rare as a private nanny to have your weekends off? That sounds lovely.
Oh, I think it depends on the job that you go for and whether it's a rota. So my position was rota, so they had a weekend nanny who covered, it depends on the job you go for and the family circumstances on time off. So for me, having weekends off was great, because when I was training at Norland, we only had one weekend off a month.
Wow.
It's not the case now. because now you're a student and you're in digs, whereas when I qualified, we were living in.
Yeah, fair. How would you say, because a lot of people listening to this would be working in the private sector within the households, there'll be, you know, the house managers and the butlers and housekeepers and stuff. As a private nanny, did you have much interaction with the other staff within the home?
Oh yes, that was part of yes, we were a community together, working together. So in my first job there was a housekeeper, and there was a chauffeur, and there was a bodyguard. So yes, it was important that we all communicate and got on together, because we were all, you know, working towards the same goals, which was to, you know, keep the children happy and do our job for the family. So absolutely, we would very much see ourselves as part of the household.
Yeah, because I suppose it's that teamwork, isn't it? Because whilst their focus is probably looking after the adults in the family, your focus is the children. So as a team, everyone's covered, but there needs to be that teamwork and consistency and communication across the board.
Communication is key. Because you might not quite know. Some of our nannies have to, you know, fly out with families at short notice to places, you know, go abroad, and be kind of organized to do that movement quite quickly. Very much communication between, you know, all of the household would be important. And it also depends on where you know, what sort of contact you have with them. So for example, in my first job I had my own nanny floor, but we spent a lot of time downstairs in the basement area in the kitchen with the rest of the staff, because that was where all the social interaction and, you know, was going on, even with my employers as well. So yeah,
that's really nice, I think, because I think it could be quite easy to feel as a nanny that you're not included within the team, and you're seen as one of the kids at the kids table with the kids, you know what I mean? It's not a thing to be included.
I think it was that kind of difficulty that Emily Ward wanted to kind of address, because back in, you know, Victorian times, you weren't a servant, but you weren't proper, and you kind of fell between the two stools really as a nanny, and so that's kind of what she was trying to address.
I suppose it makes it quite tricky getting the fit right, because with most private household staff, obviously being able to do the job's one thing, but probably more importantly, fitting with the family, primarily the principals, is obviously very important, and the rest of the staff, whether they get on with the kids or not, is fairly irrelevant, because I would have probably very little to do with the children. But as a nanny, there's even more people you need to fit with: the parents, the staff, the management, the principal of the family, the manager within the household, and the children. And obviously the relationship with the children is absolute key, but so is the relationship with the house manager and the mum and dad. So there's lots of elements that could fall down there.
Yeah, there is, and that's why we always try and make sure that there's a thorough interview process. So that nannies can ask their questions of families can ask the nanny questions, and both parties can get a feel for whether or not it's going to fit their circumstances and the dynamics. And
those trial periods are key.
Absolutely. And, you know, with COVID, it's been tempting not to, you know, to sort of dive straight in, but we've tried to be clear that, you know, there needs to be that trial period on both sides, so that we can make sure that we're happy. I know it's often the case, isn't it, that as you go along, as you become more experienced, you understand and learn the important questions to ask. So it's not often until something goes wrong that you think, oh, I should have clarified that, or I should have asked that.
We had a situation that was quite awkward, where we'd placed a nanny. We can talk about this. We placed a nanny, and we didn't realise at the time. It's now a question we talk to about nannies, but when the nanny went out to work for the family, the nanny didn't believe in like cow pollen medicine and stuff for the children. The nanny didn't, which is weird, but the parents did, and so there's a massive hoo-ha, because the parents wanted the children who were ill to be like provided medicine, and the nanny was really uncomfortable doing it, basically refused to be the one to give it. And that's a huge, like, issue, isn't it, where they
Yes.
believe different things.
Yes.
Obviously now we cover early on. I wouldn't have even have thought to, oh my god, I'm chucking cowpole down my kids' throat all the time. Like I wouldn't even thought that that would be an issue for some people, but I guess some people it is. But then I suppose if you're a nanny, that's one of the, there must be times working as a private nanny where what you believe isn't relevant, and you need to surely do what the family want for the children.
And I think that's why it's important to kind of establish those kind of red lines, you know, at the interview process, or you know, in the trial, so that if there are red lines, say for the nanny or for the parents, then they're ones that both parties are happy with.
Yeah.
You know, back in when we were founded, Emily Ward didn't believe in corporal punishment, and that's still something, obviously, that and back then, you know, that was considered really, really controversial. You know, so for example, that might be a red line, or should be a red line for our nannies. Whereas some families, you know, might use corporal punishment and not think about it. So it's about it's about that professional conversation. I mean, that's a word we use a lot actually at Norland. It's about having that professional conversation to establish those boundaries and values and beliefs.
Yeah,
but it can be very difficult.
How does it work from a cultural point of view? Because I don't know why I think that, but like the people that come and study at Norland, are they typically British?
The majority are British, yes, or hold a British passport. So we haven't got a license to take foreign students at the moment. So the majority, so they have to have a British passport. So they can come from other European countries, but they have to have a British passport, and obviously they have to be able to speak English well enough to follow the course. We're trying to widen our reach all the time. So we have male students now. About 3 or 4 a year come to Norland, but I'm not sure if I know the actual figures of how many come from Europe. Perhaps 2 or 3 again.
Because my only question must be, like, you must get requests from families that would like language skills, or do you get requests from families saying if they've worked with other I don't know, Indian families would like, do you know what I mean? It's difficult.
Yes.
A lot when we're fitting, you know, trying to fit employ like candidates into multicultural households, that it can be quite difficult when we're, I don't know, all our nannies are predominantly white British nannies, and then multicultural households that are looking for something slightly different. It's quite, I don't know, it's quite difficult to make that fit.
Yeah, any nanny that is bilingual is more popular, but often they want English nannies. Often our families want the archetypal British nanny. So, and that's why they're coming to us. So although we make sure that our, you know, curriculum is inclusive and diversive and is full of diversity, my experience at the agency has been that often employers have very set ideas about what they want.
And that's bloody Mary Poppins for you, that is.
Yeah.
She's got a lot to answer for, that woman.
Yeah, and you know, you either go with it or you know, it's and we haven't been able to prove it, but there was a theory that Mary Poppins was based on Norland Nanny.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
I've forgotten the name of the author, but apparently she had experience of the Norlander, and there's a theory that we've not been able to prove yet, that she that was what it was based on. Because some of our Norlanders, our alumni Norlanders, we have a lovely collection of artifacts that have been left to us or given to us by Norlanders who, you know, going back in history. So we've got medals from the war, we've got royal nannies who work for royal families. The Russian royal family had one nanny who escaped the revolution by a whisker with her children. You know, we've got all sorts of archive information on what our Norlanders have done. And when land girls, they the war effort, all sorts of different things. And of course, our Norlanders now during COVID are showing great tenacity and dedication. We have a motto, love never faileth. And I think we can't ask any more of our Norlanders than to demonstrate that quality.
Yeah, lovely. But in terms of people on British nannies, it's it's similar in other roles as well. The British butler is a very sought after type of person, and that's why we do quite well over in UAE in the Middle East, because they want European level of service, and typically a British butler. Americans go nuts for British butlers. Which is I don't know if they know something we don't know, but but they do. But it's good, isn't it? And if that's what people are looking for, and then you can specialize in that, then brilliant.
Yes, and there are different standards, across the world, really, in expectations around qualifications in early years. So, for example, in America, there's still no formal qualification for a nanny.
Oh, really?
No. And so one of the things we're trying to campaign for is for nannies to be officially recognised as professionals and for the industry to be regulated, which it currently isn't. So Dr. Janet Rose, our principal, is actually heading up the Regulation Matters campaign in order to get regulation in place for nannies.
You would think that's mental, because we protect our children beyond everything, yet it's regulated. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in America, not to pick on America, but they're one of the few countries that haven't signed the United Convention on the Rights of the Child, United Nations, which most countries have signed up to. I think there's 2 countries, one's an African country and America, and that's because they can't meet the minimum requirements to do with early years and children. So yeah, it's quite frightening.
There we go. And so in terms of not that we want to sort of focus on some of the pitfalls, but what are if someone's considering this career, it's not all glamorous, and there are some very difficult elements of this role. What would you say people should be very aware of coming into private nanny, some of the challenges and difficulties they may face in their career?
I think one of the things is you need to be clear about the hours you're working. Some of our nannies work very long hours, and particularly during COVID, we've seen that that's become a bit blurred. So establishing a working pattern that works for the family and for you, remembering that you're living in somebody else's house, and that can be tricky, and making sure that the boundaries and the expectations around that are clear for everybody. And those would be the 2 main things, I think, that I would, nannies, and communication, and making sure that you feel that you can communicate openly and honestly with the family, and obviously the children. So, some nannies like to work with babies, some like to work with older children, a mixture, and that if it's a family that travel a lot, that you're all right with that, and that you're comfortable traveling. So I think I would say those are kind of the main pitfalls.
I suppose traveling must be a fairly key part of the role with ultra high net worths. They must expect their nannies, or would want their nannies to be traveling with them. That must be fairly normal. For some, perk of the job, I guess.
Yes, but traveling with little ones isn't always fun. And you arrive jet lagged, and then if you're getting up to the children in the night, you're not on holiday, so like the family is. So it can be quite, and then time off can be more tricky when you're on holiday. So I suppose it's about being flexible. If I would say one of the qualities you need is flexibility, flexibility in organisation. So those would be 2 qualities I think you would need to be.
We've recruited nannies for some Middle Eastern clients, and a massive challenge there, I think, especially for a British nanny, is often they'll have 6 nannies to 1 kid. Quite normal. That must be such an unusual situation for a nanny that's not worked in this environment before. Actually, then you've got another angle. You've got your relationship with the other nannies and how that all works.
And how that all works out. So particularly in the Middle East, they do have large groups of nannies. I mean, I have heard of a story where one Norland nanny was employed just to pick up what the prince dropped. That was her full-time job
not surprised at
as
all.
a Norland nanny. but I've never been able to properly authenticate that. That was the rumour at the time.
And I suppose with that story, it's a case of either she's thinking, God, I'm well paid for a cushy job, or she's thinking, I studied 4 years for this, just because the guy can't keep things in his hand for very long.
Yeah, and I think it depends what you're looking for out of the job. For some people it's the experience of going abroad and living in other households and seeing how people live.
Yeah, it's an experience, and some of the people that we sort of send out, if it could be just money, so go out for 12 months and come back and buy a house and experience it for what it is. Don't worry about if you don't come back with all these
and it's thinking about the child in the center of all of that. So if you're a child and you're part of a large entourage, how does that feel to the child? Do they feel safe? Do they feel heard? All those sorts of things as well. And if you've had lots of nannies over a period of time, how do you feel about making relationships? And so it can be, if a child has had lots of nannies, that can be that can be more difficult.
Yeah. Okay, then, so just sort of wrap up a little bit then. So how's COVID affected you guys teaching at Norland? And when's your intake, and what steps should people take, and what can they expect over sort of 2021 if they wanted to come and study?
So we're back to face-to-face teaching in the beginning of March. Obviously socially distanced and with all the rules in place. So we've been working very hard to make sure that we can do all of that. So the college will be open as normal from March onwards, beginning of March onwards, with testing and, as I say, social distancing. So we are going to be carrying on as normal. So you apply anytime in the usual manner through UCAS, as I said. I believe that starts in the spring. Our term starts in September. That's when our term officially starts. And you apply through UCAS, and then you'll be invited through for interview. How we're going to do the interviewing now, it might be a combination because of COVID, depending on people's circumstances, but normally it's a face-to-face interview. And you get letters of conversation. We issue golden tickets in the previous years. Everybody who's got honours received a golden ticket through the post. We try and make it special from day one.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, and then you'll send all relevant information, and we go from there.
Yeah, cool. Well, I now feel like I'm absolute pro on Norland. I didn't know anything much before, and they were recognisable. So, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I know that the UK royal family, I think Norlanders are involved with and stuff, and you sort of, so I've always just held Norlanders in such high regard when it comes to, their level and sort of calibre. And so it's definitely a worthwhile degree for sure. And if you're going to go into a career in childcare, especially in the private sector, you're not going to give yourself a stronger start, I don't think, than if you were to go to a specialised place of study like this. No. And then with the agency aspect added to it, that's incredible, especially when you have more vacancies than candidates. So it's going to be a case of, is this degree going to be worthwhile? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to even get a job with it? You will if you want, if the jobs available are suitable. And then the whole sort of Norlander for life is just lovely. If I called my university up now, they'd be like, what? Who? Do you know what I mean? So how lovely to have that. Well, it's a community, isn't it? A community of like-minded individuals that can stay together.
Yeah. And you stay in touch with, we call them sets, the groups that you're in, and often, who you trained with, they're friends for life, and we have set reunions and, general reunions. So yes, we're very much encouraged, because nannying can be a lonely job. And those networks are important.
Yeah, really lovely. So thank you so much for joining. Really, really nice sort of chatting, get to know a bit more, and hopefully people listening have found it quite interesting and will have a newfound respect for the nannies that they work with, and especially if they've come from Norland. So when we put this out, we're going to make sure that we have got links here to Norland so people can come to your website for information if they've got any questions. And hopefully, if anyone has been on the fence, this has helped them with their decision as to the best way forward for them. So thank you very much for joining us on the show, Julia. Thank you to everybody for listening. I hope you have a nice couple of weeks, and I look forward to talking to you all again in 2 weeks' time. I'll speak to you then. Cheers.